Always trim it. I've been doing a recorded series of well wishes for my dad's 90th birthday with all of his surviving friends. I never should have agreed to do that.
That sounds like a lot.
But getting all these people on the internet to record like video, it's not been easy.
Oh, but it's such a nice idea.
Yeah, but 90-year-olds are like, what's a web browser? I don't.
You know, one of my friends is in her 80s, but she has no internet at all. She just doesn't do any of it. And it's just, I realized finding a pad and paper and a stamp to write a letter. It's just, it's a real challenge. And she lives in Canada, so then I have to like rummage around. I'm like, oh, Canadian stamps.
Yeah. Yeah, I had one guy send me a handwritten manuscript of his memoirs that he'd written that my dad was in. You know, it's like, okay, thanks. It's like getting a medieval manuscript when I asked for a web video. It's pretty cool though. There's this site called tribute.com that it's actually, they open it up for free if you want to use their tools DIY, and it lets you assemble kind of a reel of sort of well wishes for virtual celebrations. It's pretty cool. You know, and they for $90 they set it up for you and put in transitions and music and stuff like that. It's kind of a good deal. Yet another entrepreneurial venture for COVID. Yeah.
No, stop.
You got a
The
dog
dog
chasing?
wants to play ball. No. I need the next 2 hours.
Yeah.
Debbie, did you want me to be looking for the questions?
Yeah, that would be great. I will probably very busy with talking. So
Actually, Debbie, if you don't mind, I'm just gonna test playing the video and make sure we're all set up for that. That's okay.
yeah, totally. I'll let you
if
know.
y'all tell me if you can see it.
Yeah.
Can you see it?
Yeah.
And can you hear it?
No.
Do you, when you go to screen share, there's a little button at the bottom that says share computer sound. You got to hit that before, so you got to leave screen share and go back and then start it again, but just hit that little button this time.
It's a good thing that you checked.
I've had that experience in class. I'm like, why can't I get this video to work?
So say that again, Bruce.
So when you do the screen share option, you'll see a box at the bottom before you choose your window. And that box says share computer sound.
Oh, I found it. Thank you. Perfect.
Relax, Neil, relax.
Should we try it one more time just to make sure?
Yeah, why not?
Yeah.
Okay.
I have 3 minutes.
Can you see it?
Yeah.
All right.
Them in your work.
Yeah.
TLABs are about reframing, not in the sense of.
Awesome.
Perfect.
The voice is horrible, but the video is good. I hate to hear my voice.
Okay, I'm about to admit our first participant.
Okay.
Bring him on. That looked like a cool tool you had there, David. Powtoon or something? Did you?
I did it with Toons, something.
It lets you animate and do your own sort of graphic animation.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I use the free version that doesn't allow you so much, but yeah, it has a lot of options that you can use already made up.
Yeah.
You can do all the animation. You can do move everything around.
That's cool. Yeah, I worked with a graphic facilitator, but she doesn't do animations. So maybe the combination of those two. Get something out of it. Learn all kinds of tools this last 6 months.
We have become tool users.
Yeah.
More than researchers. Yeah.
Yeah. Miro is something I've been hitting real hard. Have you guys seen that?
It worked really well in the first workshop, I think.
Yeah. Doing all my classes using it. They're doing so they meet on their own and do project work, and then we bring it up in class. It's been pretty handy.
that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm almost regretting having to go back to pen and paper. If we ever
I
do.
know. I know. Some things we will miss, others not so much.
Yeah. Yeah, I wish we had classrooms that were like AV equipped with computer screens and they could network
I
their
think it's
laptops.
coming. I think it will happen. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. You guys are more tech than I think our campus is.
ASU is quite into whatever gadgets we can
Yeah.
handle. Yeah. Yeah, I'm not sure about how much you do, but yeah, we do a
Yeah,
lot.
you've got that sort of interaction lab. I forget what
Yeah,
that.
the decision theater.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Never been in.
UNAM has one also in Mexico City.
Oh yeah.
Mhm.
Oh, now I'm jealous. We got to get one at Boulder. We might skip over it though. We'll just give everyone VR headsets.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They will have.
Yeah. Well, folks, it's 9 o'clock, but we'll give folks a couple minutes to stagger in.
Yeah, sounds good.
Yeah. And
So
in the
you're-
meantime, oh, sorry. Go ahead, David.
No, I was saying you are going to start with.
Yeah, I'll give a little intro.
Okay, sounds good.
Yeah, and folks who are arriving, thank you and welcome for joining. For the meantime, keep your mics on mute and put your name and your location in chat. Let's just get a sense of who's here. Boulder wins by a landslide. Oslo, Aaron, you get the reward for furthest away from Boulder. Karen, I've assigned your book, You Matter More Than You Think, to most of our class, and they're going to do a group project around it. So maybe I'll share the results with you.
That's great. I'm revising it right now, so if they have any feedback, that would be perfect and timely.
Yeah,
Thanks.
perfect. Yeah, I like your method of putting the draft out there and saying, okay, what do you guys think?
It's like IPCC, really daunting to have so many comments. Like, oh.
Yeah. Yeah, I thought we're using this platform called Perusall. It allows sort of collaborative annotation of text. And so hoping to get some sort of collective perspective as well as the individual. Yet another cool new tool. Yeah, we'll wait just a couple more minutes. I see people are still gathering. We've got folks from Romania, Dresden, Broomfield, which is from someone from Boulder that's just as exotic as Romania. Tempe. Quite a range of weather conditions, I believe. We've had some snow recently. Not a lot of snow in Tempe.
Not yet, but never know. We had
Global cooling.
the
hasn't kicked in.
driest year this year. We got only 30% of the average rainfall. So
Yeah, it's been super dry. God. Yeah, they're talking. It's from a crisis management perspective. They're talking about not being able to create artificial snow on the ski mountains this year. From a Boulder perspective, that's just a huge
drama. The end of the world.
It doesn't really rate in terms of what's going on in the world, but in the Boulder bubble, it's a big deal. Okay, I think I'm going to jump in with my introduction.
Goldstein.
We ready to roll? If you're coming on late, just make sure your mics are muted for now, although we'll have plenty of time for interaction in a little while. So I'd like to welcome everyone to the third of our fall workshops for the Transformations Community of Practice. I'm Bruce Goldstein. I'm an associate professor here at CU Boulder in environmental design and environmental studies. And I'm also directing the NetWeaver Network, which is a learning community for transformative change making. and helping organize the transformations community of practice. So like a lot of you have sort of a lot of hats and a lot of things going on, both on the reflection side and on the practice side, which I think is characteristic of our community. So the transformations community of practice is an effort to build this community of practitioners and academics and pracademics. And we've held conferences over the last 8 years. The first one was convened by Karen O'Brien, who's on the line, in Oslo. And then we had meetings in Dundee and Santiago. And we were going to meet in Barcelona, which would have been a lot of fun in 2021, but then 2020 happened. So instead, we're convening a global virtual conference, which is going to be on June 17th and 18th. And if you're on the mailing list for this, which you are, we'll be sending you an announcement for that soon. It's about to go live for requests for proposals. And also we have another conference scheduled next year, I believe, that Karen is taking the lead on. Although I don't want to jump the gun in terms of lifting the curtain on that, but I'm we're looking forward to the possibility of increasing the incidence of these conferences to every year. And we're doing a lot of other stuff, including these workshops. So we're gonna, this conference in June is gonna have 3 live conversations in 3 different time zones, as well as recorded sessions. So we're trying to use the capacity available to us to give opportunities for folks to be engaged with this. So come to our website, which is transformationscommunity.org, which I can put in chat, which is where the website where the conference announcement is going to be posted, as well as everything else we're doing in the community. We also have an arts page there, which is is part of the DNA of this conference series, is to think across different modalities of expression and sharing. And we have also a page of organizational partners there. So if you want to be a partner to the community, please drop us an email. We'd be delighted to put your logo up there and talk about ways of collaborating. We're sponsoring other workshops next year. And if you have virtual events going on, we'd love to publicize them. We have an events page. So please send us your announcements for transformations related, practice-oriented events, and we'd love to publicize those. Our emphasis here is on practice, transformations practice, on learning useful tools and techniques, but we also recognize there's nothing as useful as a good theory, right? So we are looking across the full spectrum of activities in this space. So our workshop today is entitled Mobilizing Collective Agency Through Technologies of the Self in Transformations Labs. It's presented by 4 folks who are on the line. There's David Manuel Naverte and Hali Eakin, Lakshmi Charlie Joseph, and Mario Siqueiros Garcia. So welcome all 4 presenters. Thank you for joining us and presenting your work. They're going to be teaching us about 2 tools to raise participant awareness about our actual and potential agency for social ecological transformation. And they call those ego nets and avatars. So they developed these tools to support T-Labs, or Transformations Labs, which are participatory spaces to activate and mobilize collective agency and intentions for stagnant sustainability challenges. There's plenty of those out there. So these are tools and news you can use. Really happy to have you guys here. So welcome to our presenters, and I'd like to hand it over to them to begin.
Thank you, Bruce. Here we go. We have 2 wonderful hours ahead of us, and we will do 3 things. First, we will explore the 3 concepts, T-Labs, technologies of the self, and collective agency. Why these 3? Because they allow us to approach transformations as inside-out processes. In contrast to other approaches that objectify, analyze, assess, or imagine systems out there and the future, systems which are assumed to be transformable through external manipulation, visioning, etc. Instead, inside-out transformation focuses on helping people to transform themselves, with the idea that such self-transformations will somehow trickle down into the systems they inhabit and co-create. So that's the first thing, explore these 3 concepts. The second one, probably the most important one, we will demonstrate how to apply 2 specific tools or technologies of the self, which we created for our T-Labs in Mexico, Ego Nets and Avatars, as Bruce was mentioning. And the third one is to have time for Q&A and also for 2 short breakout sessions, about 10 to 15 minutes each. We will be able to in these sessions, hopefully you will be able to consolidate your understanding about the application of each tool, but the breakout sessions will be semi-structured and softly facilitated, and the main goal is to take a break, is to talk with other attendants, and so not a stress, please, zero stress or very little stress, and to have a casual conversation about the tools. So no need to produce any outcomes, but for the second session, breakout session, you will need a piece of paper and pen or pencil. So if you have time at any point to grab that, go ahead and do it. And please use the chat anytime to ask questions and raise your hands, your virtual hand, when we are in a Q&A section. So let's start with the three concepts. TLABs, I won't say a lot about TLABs. I will focus more on the knowledge of the self, but TLABs are, as Bruce was mentioning as well, participatory spaces where new agency is activated in relation to sustainability challenges. The main goal of a TLAB is allowing collective intentions towards transformations to emerge. How can we measure whether a TLAB is successful or not? Well, a TLAB should direct the participants' attention towards their own agency and towards realizing how their agency is embedded within and connected to the agency of others in the social ecological system. So as I said, we will not say a lot about TLABs today, but we will play now a very short cartoon video. There is plenty of info about TLABs in the list of publications and our TLAB guides that are available online. And after the cartoon video, which Ashley is sharing now, I will present the analysis of the self, which will be the most theory-intensive concept of the three that we are seeing today. And after a brief Q&A, Lakshmi and Mario will discuss the concept of collective agency. So I think you need Ashley to start from the beginning. Yeah. Okay.
This short video introduces the concept of TLABs and how to use them so that you can apply them in your work. TLABs are about reframing, not in the sense of reframing problems or solutions, but reframing ourselves, which means reframing our relationships. TLABs are people-oriented rather than problem or solution-oriented. Facilitators help agents on the ground to share intentions and become aware of their deeply held values, beliefs, meanings, and assumptions. Through that awareness, agents can reframe their relationships with the system, others, and themselves. The system is changed from within through changing our relationships at the personal level. All this is achieved through creative tools and fun exercises. Our experience suggests that in this process, individual and collective agency can be activated. The goal is not to seek control over outcomes, but to work with others towards opening new solution pathways. Now, moving forward, some lessons in case you are thinking of implementing a TLAB. Never assume that agents already have agency. A big portion of the TLAB time needs to be spent in building agency, which is anything but easy. There are limits to how much diversity one can embrace in the TLAB, so one needs to avoid the logic that the process needs to be representative of existing perspectives in the system. Collective agency needs immersion. TLABs cannot be one-off events one cannot parachute in. They require years with multiple interactions where facilitators keep some presence on the ground and personal relationships can flourish. Researchers need to be extremely flexible and adaptive to the point of not having any idea of where things are heading and be perfectly okay with it. This can be really tough for academics used to control experiments. We are the STEP Center North American Hub. You can find our publications, a very useful and colorful guide with details on how to apply TLABs in our website. Stay transformed.
Yeah, so I guess we can. Oops. Oh. Sorry. Okay, I hope you, here we go. I hope you notice the beautiful voice and the, of the narrator of the video. It's so difficult to get used to one's own voice, hearing your own voice. So let's start with the analysis of the cell. This was what we wanted to share about TLAPS, but we can discuss more in the breakout sessions or the Q&A. In terms of the analysis of the self, this is of course a concept that comes from Foucault. So welcome to some theory intensive exercise, brace up, but do not worry, because you don't need to really grasp this part in order to understand how to apply TLAPS or the tools that we are presenting. It's just an opportunity for going a little bit more in depth. So for Foucault, it's working, yeah. For Foucault, any science like economics, biology, psychology, medicine, etc., is a specific truth game related to specific technologies that human beings use to understand themselves. So from this perspective, science is as much about understanding the world out there as it is about understanding what constitutes ourselves, our knowledge, our practices, our types of rationality, our relationship to ourselves or to others, etc., etc. And as we understand ourselves, so we also perceive the world. This is important because we tend to define science as perceptions of objects, structures, behaviors out there that are somehow independent from the perceiver. But for Foucault, our perceptions are dependent on and mediated by our own self-understanding. Okay. So which are these specific technologies that human beings use to understand themselves? Foucault identifies 4 types of technologies, and the 4 of them tend to be present in every truth game. It's just that different games emphasize some types of technologies over others, but they are all interacting in any science or in any truth game. It's not only science that are truth game, there are all sorts of different truth games. For Foucault, almost everything is a truth game. So the 4 types are technologies of production, which allow us to produce, transform, or manipulate things. And it's in the process of this manipulation, we foster self-understanding, right? Technologies of signification, which allow us to use signs, meanings, and symbols. Technologies of power, which seek to determine the conduct of individuals and subject them to certain ends or to some form of domination. And technologies of the self, which allow individuals to effect by their own means, so it's something that they do on themselves, or with the help of others, a certain number of operations on their own bodies and souls, thoughts, conduct, and way of being, so as to transform themselves in order to attain a certain state of happiness, purity, wisdom, or perfection. That's how Foucault defines the analysis of the self. So in summary, truth games are fundamentally about understanding ourselves. And we do this understanding through transforming things. Okay, through transforming cognitive processes, through symbols and meanings, through transforming transforming the conducts of others, and through transforming or to enabling people to transform themselves. So these are, I'm linking now, that the technologies to the themes that we are concerned with in this transformations community. An important point for our transformation community is that we tend to focus on the outcomes of transformations. Instead, we are proposing here that we should focus more on how the process of transformation might be related to subjective truth and self-understandings. So the outcome is not perhaps something that we need to place all our attention into. So let me use an example, the practice of Western medicine, an example of a truth game, because otherwise, without an example, it's kind of difficult to understand these abstract ideas. First, we associate Western medicine with the healing of bodies, but the Foucauldian first step is to acknowledge that through this specific practice of producing healthy bodies, we simultaneously generate particular understandings about ourselves, about who we are. I hope you can see the importance of this distinction. And then the second step is to explore how Western medicine articulates the 4 types of technologies. For example, a basic truth in this game is that healthy bodies are attained by producing adequate biochemical balances, which can be achieved, for instance, through the use of drugs, right? So technologies of production seems to be quite important and predominant in this particular truth game. Then, to the extent that individuals do not have direct knowledge of their biochemical imbalances, technologies of power are also key, with doctors having the authority of determining the conducts that patients should do, or what drugs should be legal and acceptable to attain a certain state of biochemical balance. In technologies of signification don't appear very relevant because the meaning, symbols, etc., are fixed or given by professionals, and the patient's beliefs are generally not considered relevant from a biochemical standpoint. That was, of course, until this year. Now it seems that there is more ideology games involved in this, in the Western medicine field. But in principle, you know, the ideology shouldn't normally don't play a lot of a big role. Likewise, technologies of the self are not very salient as long as it's assumed that doctors know the truth of our own health better than we do, right? So something that I want to, an important distinction here is that the technologies of the self and the technologies of power often clash with each other, because technologies of the self are based on the subjectivization of the self, and technologies of power are based on the subjectivization of the subject, right? So there is a clash there. Versus technologies of productions and signification are more compatible with each other and with technologies of power, because they are based on objectification of matter, of ideas, or of the subject, right? Okay, so that was the example. I hope it was clear. Okay. Now, in this community, the truth game that we are interested about is the sustainability of or making social ecological systems sustainable through transformations, right? So at the level of production, we are generally concerned with greening technologies, greening material technologies, right? And in the sustainability field, the technologies of signification often take the form of competing discourses or narratives. We tend to use the term behavior instead of conduct, and the term agency to talk about the self, but you know, it's more or less equivalent. Now, when we look at participatory processes and we focus on the analysis of production, most participatory workshops in our community aim at innovations and interventions for sustainability focuses on these green technologies, right? Deliberative processes are more focuses on technologies of signification, right? What you want to do is to discuss discourses, what ideas are out there, and come perhaps to a consensus or to an agreement, or make you know, change the discourse in a sense. Now, when our focus is on technologies of power, the deliberative process tends to be more educational. It's more like an educational intervention that is based more on these technologies of power. It's more just transferring some knowledge, you know, saying what's the right thing to do, or helping others to do whatever they are interested in doing in a more effective way by using one particular administrative or organizational system, right? And what we argue is that TLABs, which can include all these 3 technologies, but we're proposing here that TLABs should emphasize technologies of the self. And this is what we meant by the system being changed from within, through changing our relationships at the personal level. For example, through technologies of the self, participants can explore empathy and narratives about themselves and their relationships to others in the system, using affection and compassion, and as well as rationality, of course, to avoid or on one extreme, avoid bipolar views of good versus bad guys, and on the other extreme, avoid both sideism. So it's exploring this internal space and to find balances within. So yes, finishing the analysis of the self in the context of TLABs are concerned with the transformations of the system's agents, enabling them to shape their connection to the system, to others in the system, as well as to themselves. My final point is that Foucault argued that Western society emphasized, or has emphasized in the last centuries, technologies of power, signification, and production. This has been like the focus, the dominant focus of Western society for Foucault. He showed that technologies of the self were emphasized in ancient Greece and the Hellenistic period of the Romans, but this changed with Christianity and Descartes and science. Thus, and this is my final point, TLABs that emphasize technologies of the self need to face the challenge of going against or needing to undo this legacy of Western culture that has been by default focusing on these three technologies and not necessarily on technologies of the self, even though they were quite common before Christianity. So I think we are doing good in terms of time. We have some time for questions and answers, like 5 minutes. And if there are no questions and answers, that's okay, because then we will have more time for the breakout sessions. But I don't know whether someone wants to jump in or there is anything in the chat. So the idea is to, you have questions specific about TLABs or technologies of the self. This is a good time, but there will be at the end of the workshop and in other parts of the workshop time for these questions or other questions.
David, I don't know if this is something you're going to cover later, but I wonder if you want to give us a sense of the sort of, the genealogy of this, to use a Foucauldian term. Sort of where, how it was applied and in what context.
You mean in the context of Mexico or?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, maybe you're going to hit that.
Yeah, I think, I mean, the way in which technology, you mean technologies of the self, right? Yeah, so the way we apply this by designing tools that were focused on this inner exploration, in a sense, right? In a sense, is like being aware of your thoughts, of who you are, your identity, and everything, versus coming to a workshop with a particular identity that hasn't been questioned and you haven't reflected on, and then you have a goal of achieving something. That's, I think, one common attitude to come to workshops. And then TLABs want to break that and start by saying, okay, let's reflect first on who we are, what we want, and why we want what we want, and what other wants, and let's share, and then create some collective agency based on that process of self-reflection, collective self-reflection, right?
David, there's a question in the chat. Sorry, Bruce.
That's what I was going to say.
Yeah, from Bruce Hall. Could you provide some examples of biases, assumptions, and values that the TLABs explores?
Do you want to answer that, Hali, or Lakshmi?
Lakshmi probably would be a good person to.
Well, one clear one is that in the TLAB, and of course the problem is that we are not providing a lot of details about what we did in the TLAB, but in this TLAB in Mexico City was in a wetland area, and there were people who wanted to preserve the wetland, and people who were settlers, or informal, irregular type of settlers, and initially the majority of people we invited were the people who are farmers or wanted to preserve the wetland, but then they realized that they weren't considering the perspective of the people who were irregular settlers, and that there were opportunities for including them in the process of conservation versus try to just expel them, right? So that perception changed, I think. I don't know whether Holly want to.
Yeah, I think some of the other issues were reflections on responsibility. You know, we have assumptions moving into any problem of what is the cause, who is responsible. And so kind of a deeper look at the roles of all actors in the system and what kind of actions people are taking in those consequences. I think there was also some really interesting, and we're not presenting that exercise today, but we did some exercises to try to elicit some of the underlying values that were what people desire in the system rather than the actual material manifestation of those values. So what is the meaning of having agriculture persist in this wetland? And so that was an interesting process to see if we can find some commonalities across and question what values people have.
Okay, so I think we are at 9:30 already here. So we probably should move on into Lakshmi and Mari are going to discuss the first tool, which is Egonet. So.
Yeah, do you see the screen there? Okay. Okay, Mario, all yours.
Yeah, I think maybe you can have a full screen. Yeah, there you go. Okay, perfect. Okay, well, hi everyone, welcome. And well, in this part of the workshop, we'll talk about the concept of agency and specifically about this. How do we make this concept of agency operative? It will be a very brief introduction to this idea of ego networks. And well, next one. So just we'll go through these four points. We'll start with the very notion of agency, and then we'll talk about how we made this notion operative through the idea of ego networks, which actually we developed this tool to map these agency profiles from people. Then we'll go to an example where Lakshmi will interview me as if we were doing fieldwork. And finally, we'll have some short conclusions. Okay, so what about the idea of agency? Well, at least the way we understood the notion of agency in the context of TLABs as David defined them, and specifically in our case study, okay, we tend to think the notion, this idea of agency in terms of individuals who have this ability to act on their own behalf in a particular environment. So there are two things that are important to mention about this. One of them is that agents are always embedded in an environment, okay? And the other one, which comes from the fact that anything that comes from an individual that we can identify as an action has to come from an agent. So what it means is that actions, when you see them from the perspective of an agent, are always meaningful, right? And that's a fundamental point. Now, I already said that an agent is always embedded in an environment, and this also means that an agent is always embedded in a social context. I mean, agents are never in the nothingness of the universe. They're not floating there. We're part of a group of people who actually we're always interacting it, and agency comes through and emerges from these interactions with others. So we can consider agency in terms of individuals, always thinking that we're part of the social world, but also we can think about this idea of agency in terms of the collective. And just to mention something very briefly, I think that the part of a project was to think about this very notion of collective agency. Okay, so it's if you want to go more into details about this concept, which I think is quite interesting, we can have at the end of the session this conversation. Okay. Now, There are different things associated with the notion of agency. One of them is that when we think about the notion of an agent, we also thinking about the idea of responsibility and attribution. That means that me as an agent, I know that I am the source of an action, but that also means that I can recognize that somebody who's acting and I perceive that person as an agent, it's also, I can also attribute this responsibility to that person. Okay, and it also works backwards, right? I mean, on the other way around. I mean, somebody else can see my actions, that what I'm doing, me being the source of that action. Now, this takes us to the other point, which is that because the actions of an agent are always on the behalf of the agent or of the individual, okay, and I can see that or I can attribute this responsibility to an agent or to this particular agent, which can be somebody else or myself, okay, these actions are subjected to a normative stance, which means that the actions of an agent can always are assessed as good or bad, right or wrong. Saying this in a different way, you can see that the actions of an agent are always guided and motivated by values, beliefs, knowledge, and interests, right? And finally, one of the things that are important that comes from sociology, the idea about agency, is that an agent can always mobilize certain resources. And these resources can be the resources that I find in my social network, but these other resources can also be, for example, knowledge or beliefs, for example, right? Next slide, please. Okay, so this notion of agency is quite abstract. Okay, so how do we work in order to make this notion of agency more operative? So I mean, how do we go outside and try to see agency in action, right? So what we did is that we developed this idea of mapping these agency profiles by interviewing people in order to see who these egos or agents are working with, okay, and in which context, which we call a problem space. Thank you. Okay, so we can divide this idea of agency in three aspects, right? One of them is we have the agent who's working with somebody. So we have this agent and collaborators. We also have that this agent is working with some collaborators, sharing some practices, which we call doing something or doing what, okay? And in a third moment or space, we would say that this agent working with somebody, doing something particular, sharing these practices, they're doing it in some particular space. And I go back to my first point, right? That where agents are always embedded in a world or an environment, working with others and connected by sharing practices. So for this part of the workshop, we'll only touch the first part, which is mapping in these what we call ego nets, these agents and their social context. Okay, like you can go ahead.
Yes, thank you. Hi. So for us, the ego networks were done through a semi-structured interview. So it was not us mapping their ego networks, but the agents or the interviewees drawing their ego networks. So it's kind of a self-net. So through a semi-structured interview where we asked several questions, one of the important aspects of this semi-structured interview was doing their ego networks. We did this before any collective interaction, so to have a sort of a baseline of how was their ego network composed, and therefore to be able to then later throughout the project, being able to see if there would be some potential changes. So as you can see in the pictures, we did this in a big paper or flip chart with Post-its and markers. So it's not about having a computer there and doing the ego networks in a computer, but really, really doing it with them in the field. So to break down what is the idea of an ego network, we have several dimensions that we used to develop them. You can, of course, have others that aren't these specific ones. You can change some of these, but we will show you what we used. So the first dimension is the composition of the actors or agents. So as Mario was saying, the ego is the interviewee and the alters are the collaborators. You can have a composition more like a traditional way of mapping the sectors. But for us, it's important to also mention that it's not just about traditional sectors or official sectors. So you could have sector 1 is academia, sector 2 is government, sector 3 is NGOs, sector 4 private, or whatever you want. Or it could be also groups of people that for the interview are important. So you can have a group is the family, another group is a subsector of academia. So that doesn't matter. At the end, it's just trying to elicit some groups. The second dimension for us that is important is the distance. So that's the degree of how close you think you work with someone or how far. So that's the perceived distance between agents. So you have, in this case, 3 concentric circles. So the smallest one in the center is the closest, then less close, and then further away. You can have more circles if you want. For us, it was more than enough to have these 3 ones. The next dimension is the perceived nature of the relation between the interviewee and the collaborators. So this could be positive, negative, neutral. So how the person thinks that relationship is. And you will see with the example how they look later. The next one is the strength of perceived influence. This is probably the most difficult one to understand. So we did 1, 2, or 3. 1 is the less like the less strong influence. 2, more or less. 3 is the strongest influence. So this could be, for example, how much attention you pay to the other one in terms of paying attention to what he's asking or saying. And there's always influence, of course, 2 ways, but there could be, according to the interviewee, different strengths of influence. You will see with the example. Then you can also map the type of relationships. So for example, it could be social, political, where you just exchange knowledge, but that's not economic. But you can also have economic. So that's, for example, a funding relationship or many others. So it depends on the objective of your project or the types of things you would be interested in mapping, that all this can change. And the last one is the practices. So there's no point in asking what about the relationships between the alters when you don't ask or you don't understand what they are doing together in terms of agency, as Mario was explaining before. So you can also always, throughout the semi-structured interview, elicit the different actions or practices this interviewee does with his or her world. So let's do a quick example. As Mario was saying, I will be the one interviewing him. Of course, we don't do it in PowerPoint normally, but for the sake of this exercise, we will do it like this. So the first thing I will ask Mario is that if you think about the people you currently work with, which groups, sectors, domains could you identify, Mario?
Yeah, well, I think my universe will be defined as academia. So I would divide my world in sustainability science, complex systems, and art as well.
Okay, so the first thing we will do is to have these 3 different domains. As I said, there could be 4, there could be less, doesn't matter. So we have sustainability science, complex systems, and art, and Mario is there in the middle. As I said before, he's the ego or the interviewee. Okay, Mario, so now, could you please name your first collaborator and place him or her in the concentric circles according to how close or far you work with him or her? So it could be in terms of frequency, trust, whatever you decide to define. So you have the 3 concentric circles here, and the smallest one is the closest one.
Yeah, one of the persons that I work with, it will be Adrian, and I will place him in the 3rd ring.
In which domain?
Sustainability science.
Okay, so let's say that he's drawing Adrian there in the 3rd concentric circle, because you don't perceive that he works with you or you work with each other that close. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. Exactly.
Okay. So the next question would be, draw a relationship arrow between you and your collaborator and tell me, what is the nature of your relationship? Do you perceive it as positive, negative, or neutral?
Yeah, we get along. I would say that it's positive, our relationship.
Okay, normally, just a quick note, you always ask why, no? So if Mario is answering that, you also ask, why do you perceive it like that? Tell me examples, and you're writing all of this down as a semi-structured interview. And we will take a lot of time if we ask Mario exactly why about everything. Okay, so you said that you perceive it as a positive relationship, that's why we put a plus sign there. Okay, so the next question would be, what is the perceived strength of the influence you have between each other? So how do you think you both consider the opinion of each other, for example?
Yeah, I would say that Adrian has more influence on my work than that I have on him. So I would say he has an influence on 2 on me, and I will have an influence of 1 on
Okay.
Adrian.
Will you just tell me a quick example of why you think he has more influence on you than you have over him?
Yeah. Well, he's the PI researcher of our project, so I tend to listen a lot about his ideas and try to implement what his thoughts on my work.
Okay. So we put number 2 near Mario. So that means that Adrian has an influence over Mario of 2, according to Mario, and Mario has an influence over Adrian of 1. Okay, that's why we put the numbers there. Yeah. Then Mario, what is the type of relationship you have with Adrian?
We'll do research together.
Okay, so we are talking about his academic world. So the type of relationships in this sense are like sub-specificalities of an academic world. So we put there research, that's the orange one, okay? And the last question would be, which specific actions or practices do you perform with your collaborator? You said you do research, but try to be a bit more specific, yeah?
Yeah, we work on methodologies in the area of sustainability science. And well, I can give an example, like we work on writing papers together, for example.
Okay, so we write down there that the practices between Adrian and Mario are write papers together and work on participatory methodologies. Okay, so let's say we do one last round of this just to complete the example. Could you tell me a second person that you work with?
Sure. In the area of complex systems, I work with Pedro, and I will place him on the second ring.
Okay, so Pedro is there, and then we ask the same things. We'll do it a little bit faster this time. So our relationship, what is it, the nature of your relationship with Pedro, Mario?
Well, we have a kind of difficult relationship, so I would say it's more like negative.
Okay, so although you work together and it's even closer than Adrian, that doesn't mean it has to be positive, and Mario saying that it's more negative. Okay, so we put a minus sign there. And the next question would be, what is the perceived strength of the influence you both have on each other?
I would say it's basically equal on each side. So I would say 1 and 1.
Okay, so we put 1 and 1 there. And then what is the type of relationship you have with him?
We do co-teaching.
Okay, so we put teaching there. And what are the specific practices or actions you do with him?
Yeah, well, we co-teach, we plan together our courses, and we teach 2 courses together.
Okay, so as you see there, I put on the practices with Adrian, you write papers together, and with Pedro, you co-teach 2 courses. So let's say we move forward, and I ask this iteratively a little bit until Mario doesn't find any other collaborators, and we go forward in time, and let's say that we already mapped 3 more, okay, with the same type of questions, and we have all the type of things Mario does with them. So Hali is there, which is a true Hali that is also here in this virtual space. And there's one last thing we want to show with this example that we didn't really do in depth, but that could be also interesting for some of you, is that to ask also about the perceived relations between the authors. So that's not really the ego network, because it's not from the ego in that sense, but it is in a way, because you are asking the ego or the interviewee how he sees the possibilities between the connections between the different authors. So let's say I ask Mario, are there any relations you want to tell us between these collaborators?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, there's a collaboration between Adrian and Hallie, and also between Adrian and Alex.
And of course, I should ask him what are these collaborations, why. I could perfectly ask also all the types of dimensions I asked before to try to understand a little bit more how Mario sees the relationships between the alters. We are not going to do that, but that's also something that could be interesting if you want to apply this type of tool. I'm going to give the floor to Mario for a last round of conclusions, and then we can finish this part. Thank you.
Sure. Well, in their specific case, we use, well, you have these three software packages that you can use for mapping your ego networks. I mean, like Lakshmi said, you always go and work with flip charts and post-its and things like that, but then you want to go and systematize this information, and you can, for you to do this, you can use these different softwares. Cytoscape is the one that we used, and actually wasn't made for social analysis, more for biological purposes, but works really well. Maybe you're more familiar with PAJEC, which is social network analysis software, and it also includes some packages for ego network analysis. And there is this other software called Gephi, which is really nice for making beautiful graphs and visualizations, and it's quite also useful. This is one of the examples of the real ego networks that we built and doing fieldwork and during our T-Lab, and these were made with Cytoscape. Yeah. Okay, so just to get some conclusions, we think that EgoNets and mapping these agency profiles is very good to have a baseline that you can go following through the whole T-Lab process, as it was in our case. So you can have some ego networks at the beginning, some EgoNets in the middle, and some at the end. You can go following the transformation between new alliances. Some alters, for example, will disappear. Some will come into the picture. Some will get closer, some will go farther away. So you can make all these follow-up and see how this agency profile goes changing over time. Okay. Now, going back to the whole David presentation about technologies of the self, well, ego networks can be very useful for having these self-reflection sessions, right? And people can become aware of several things. One of them, they can actually, for people, is quite useful to see like an object, their own social world, right? And they can see how alters are affecting them and how they're affecting others. How can they mobilize these social interactions? And they can also see that they're not alone, for example, okay? So if you want to go more into details about these tools, well, we have a paper which you can find in this link in Ecology and Society paper. We also have in the STEP Center webpage, you can also see the description of how to work with these EgoNets. And finally, we have a guide which you can also download from the webpage. Okay. So thank you. That would be it. If you want to know more about this, well, here's Lakshmi's email, and feel free to contact her or contact any of us, and we will be happy to collaborate and respond some of all of your questions.
Thank you, Mario and Lakshmi. So now we are going into the breakout sessions. We will have time for questions after the breakout sessions at the end when we present both tools. We are a little bit behind, so we'll have 10 minutes for the breakout session. We should be back by 10:03 or whatever hour you are in 03. And I think Mario, you need to, or Lakshmi, you need to unshare. Oh no, okay. Oh no. Sorry. You were going to tell what we're going to do in the breakout sessions, right?
Yeah, no, that was for you if you wanted to explain that. You want me to share it again?
Okay.
Oh, no, I'm sharing it, no?
No, it's okay. So let's go, because there will be facilitators in the breakout sessions, and they have instructions, but it's very informal. It's so there is no outcome that is needed. It's just to introduce yourself a little bit and discuss what your impressions are about this EgoNet tool. Okay. Bueno, estamos solo nosotros ahora.
Sí, ya solo nosotros, sí.
No estaba compartiendo mi presentación.
Tú sí, sí.
Ah, sí. Ah, la de
Sí, lo hiciste, que te
Technologies
quedó
of
muy
the
bien.
Self, sí.
Sí,
Ok.
sí, toda.
Ah,
Quedó muy
perfecto, porque vi el correo de Bruce y el chat de Bruce que decía, ¿puedes compartir el PowerPoint?
No, yo creo que estuvo bien.
Sí, desde el principio se vio, David.
Ok.
Sí.
Solamente hubo dos preguntas. Uno sobre si está exhaustivo el análisis de los EgoNets, que es una buena pregunta porque en algunos dominios puede ser muy grande, ¿no? Entonces la pregunta es cuándo lo debes cortar, ¿no? Hasta que, digamos,
Claro.
y yo creo que esa es digamos, the judgment of the interviewee, ¿no? De si estamos llegando a cosas muy periferial, ¿no?
Claro. Y también un punto interesante sobre eso es que, o sea, hay que recordar o sea, por ejemplo, en análisis de redes tú tienes como dos opciones, ¿no? Uno, como llegar con la lista de nombres, una lista exhaustiva y que la gente palomee todos los colaboradores. O la otra es cuáles son realmente significativos para la persona que estás entrevistando, ¿no? Y ahí lo significativo puede cortar un poco la extensión del número de colaboradores.
Sí, sí.
Hi, Eleanor. We are in breakout sessions, so
Okay,
perhaps Ashley you probably won't understand much.
that's fine. I'll just look. I
But,
just
yeah,
had trouble connecting. Thank you.
Okay, no problem. Thanks for coming.
Yo creo que se fue muy bien. Me gustó mucho la presentación, David. Y Marisa.
Marisa está apareciendo.
¿Cómo?
Sí, se entendió más o menos lo de Foucault, sí.
Sí, sí.
Sí, sí, sí.
Me gustaría
No.
que incluirlo en el clase de la primavera ojalá tengo suficiente estudiantes, pero voy a dedicar un parte a la transformación individual, ¿no? Entonces sería muy bonito. A lo mejor ustedes pueden, si no presento este video, ¿no? Todo el taller, pues les invito a dirigir una conversación.
Sí.
Además de tu charla, o sea, de lo que contaste, da para un montón de ideas para reflexionar y trabajar, ¿no?
Sí,
O sea,
sí,
incluso para un curso. Ajá. Exacto.
Debemos pensar en uno, de veras, porque también Karen, Brian está trabajando mucho con estos, pero de otras perspectivas, ¿no?
Sí.
Ese artículo que te di, Mario, de New Materialism, fue creo una estudiante de ella, un postdoc o algo así que está trabajando con ella. No conocía ese cuerpo entonces tenía que ir y leer un poquito
de literatura.
Claro. Sí, es complejo, ¿no? Y hay muchas distintas perspectivas que están tratando de abordar temas parecidos.
Sí,
¿no?
es cierto.
Sí. El nivel de complejidad es espectacular y además es irreducible, ese es el problema, ¿no? Pero uno tiene que encontrar la forma de que tenga sentido para él o para ella, ¿no? Vuestra presentación de EgoNets fue muy buena también, ¿eh? Yo creo que es la forma de hacerlo esto.
Sí, funciona muy bien.
Sí, esto de simular la entrevista es perfecto. O sea.
Muy didáctico, ¿no?
Y lo de la
Sí.
agencia también es importante, ¿no? Porque da el contexto de, ¿no? Porque si no, usamos la palabra agencia así como asumiendo que todo el mundo entiende lo mismo.
Claro.
Entonces es importante desarrollar un poco lo que queremos decir por agencia.
Así es, así es.
Alguien por ahí puso que it reminds me, no sé a qué se refería exactamente en qué parte, pero it reminds me of power mapping and stakeholder analysis.
Fue de Egonet cuando tú estabas viendo las relaciones y la naturaleza de las relaciones. Sí, pues sí. Digamos, todos esos métodos son muy parecidos, pero son usados para distintas interpretaciones, ¿no?
Claro. Sí, yo creo que en nuestro caso, o sea, el buen punto particular acerca de este método es que lo utilizamos como forma de autorreflexión, ¿no?
Sí, sí, o sea, hay que entender el método en el contexto del proceso, ¿no?
Exacto.
Yo creo que ese es el punto.
Exacto.
Y el mismo método o métodos muy parecidos, si es para publicar un paper de network analysis, es una cosa, ¿no? No te interesa tanto el efecto del ejercicio en el entrevistado, ¿no? Solo
Claro.
quieres extraer la información y ya está, ¿no?
Y ese es el otro de tratar en Social Network Analysis, de tratar de ser muy comprensivos, ¿no? Captar todo eso, porque tienes que captar la red, ¿no? Pero aquí es más la referencia de uno hacia su entorno. Entonces, es como tú lo interpretas, no es necesario ser completo objetivamente, ¿no? Es objetivo. Mejor es algo de decir, porque algunos deben conocer esos otros métodos, ¿no?
Claro.
Bueno, nos quedan 2 minutos.
2 minutitos.
Ahí nos lanzamos, vamos bien porque lo de avatars, Jali y yo tenemos poco que decir, ¿no? Entonces,
No, es muy fácil.
sí. Entonces ahí tendremos 15 minutos tranquilamente para los avatars y luego habrá un montón de tiempo para la discusión.
Ok.
A lo mejor tendríamos que haber dejado más tiempo para este breakout session, pero quién sabe, a lo mejor no sé si tiene mucho que discutir.
Exacto. Pero entonces ahora viene la presentación de avatars, nomás como para recapitular, dejarlo claro. Entonces venía avatars y después tenemos también un breakout session sobre avatars, ¿no? Hacen su ejercicio.
Sí.
¿No? Y luego volvemos ya, pero a discusión de grupo.
Discusión ya los tools primero y luego hacemos por 10 o 15 minutos discutimos los tools o tratamos de centrar la discusión en los tools y luego tengo yo las conclusiones y 10 o 15 minutos para discusión general.
Igual nada más,
una hora más.
Igual y si les dices, David, ahorita que si hay preguntas por ahí, sí va a haber espacio luego. Digo, porque a lo mejor ahorita en los breakout rooms están platicando cosas que ya quieren preguntar. Entonces nada más decirles que va a haber espacio para seguir con esas dudas que les quedaron ahorita, ¿no?
Sí.
Para que no piensen que solo cambia el tema y ya no van a poder hablar de eso.
Sí. O bueno, si quieren podemos abrir espacio para preguntas ahora. ¿Prefieren eso?
Yo digo que está bien como el plan que tenemos.
Okay.
Digo, nomás como mencionarles eso y ya.
Okay. Bueno, supongo que tardarán en ir llegando, no creo que lleguen a las... Oh, sí, así porque les ponen en...
Los traen, aunque no quieran, se los traen para acá.
1 minute.
Es un buen ejemplo del poder, ¿no?
Sí, la tecnología.
Exacto.
Hi, welcome back. Welcome back, everybody. How do we know when everybody is back?
They're back.
They're back. Okay, cool. So thanks. I hope you had some informal conversations that were useful. If you have questions about Egonet, keep them because we'll have time to to answer those or to discuss those, to ask and answer those. But now, before that, we're going to go to the second tool, which is avatars. And I need to share my screen. Let's hope it works. Okay, can you see it? Yeah, okay, cool. So avatars are visual representations of one's own powers. While in EgoNets, the focus was on unveiling with whom one collaborates, avatars are about who is collaborating towards systems transformations. And by who, we don't mean a social role, right? But who is the human being behind, right? And what are they bringing to the collaboration? So we're shifting from revealing the agent's power with, which was the focus of the EgoNets, to actualizing their power within. An important point is that the powers of avatars are not to be objectively defined. It's not so much about what powers one actually has, but what powers one believes to have at a certain moment in time and in a specific context. It's about subjective truth, which has nothing to do with alternative facts or fake news. It's different, you know, it's a subjective truth, something different. Okay, what are avatars useful for in a TLAB? First, they can be activated anytime. Once they are created, anyone can bring up their own avatar or use other avatars to seek specific powers that are needed for any task that is being discussed or any task at hand. In our TLABs, we even use avatars as a stand-in for absent participants. So if someone was unable to attend one of the meetings, because we have several meetings over times, we would still hang the avatar on the wall and say these are the powers that are available in case we need it for what we're discussing. Second point is that avatars empower not only individuals but also the group. This is because their powers can be complementary, but also because avatars are abstractions, and for us humans, it's sometimes easier to relate to each other through abstractions than through our full complexity as human beings, through our whole multidimensionality. And the third point is that avatars can help to match two or more powers. This matching is very important, matching of powers, put them together, right? As well as matching the individuals who have these powers. And those matches are made in order to address the needs of the group. So they are strategically used, right? They are strategic matches to make collaboration more effective. And now Hallie will explain how to create your own avatar, which is what you will be doing in the breakout session. Hallie?
This is a really simple exercise, and we use this at the beginning of our collective activities. So when we brought people together, we had them take out a piece of paper and draw an image or an icon, a symbol that you felt inspired that would represent you in the TLAB process. You can give it a name. People were very creative with names in our TLAB. And then critically reflect on what are the powers of your avatar. And here the powers are not aspirational. These are things that you believe your avatar brings to the table, can contribute in different types of interactions. And so you can think of this in a fairly narrow sense, in a particular domain of activity, or more broadly, a view in the world. What are the kinds of powers that you invoke? For example, I'm a person who is more of a synthesizer. I can hear a lot of ideas and try to pull them together. Maybe that's one of the powers that I can provide. And so you would write these on and around your avatar. And so here we are going to break you out into groups. You can do this for yourself. We're going to do it relatively quickly. And we're going to give you, here are just some ideas of actions or powers that your avatar might bring to the table. You may have many others, but these can be used for inspiration. And that's all. So what we're going to do is we're going to break into breakout sessions. You're going to have a chance to sit down and draw your avatar really quickly, just first things that come into mind. You'll share your drawing and discuss your powers with your group. And what the interest here is thinking not only what this reflection does for yourself, but how it also may combine, your powers may combine with others in your breakout session to create some sort of emergent power of the group. So I think with that, we're going to move into the breakout session. Is that right, Debbie?
Yeah. And you have 15 minutes. So we should be back by 10:25.
A few more people who are on the side. Umar, did you? Oh, he's gone.
Qué bueno que hemos decidido no estar en los breaks. No tenía ninguna ganas de... odio ese rol de estar ahí como el profesor. No sé cómo me dice profesor.
If you all want to join any of the rooms, just let me know and I can. Yeah.
We were just saying,
Thank you.
we're very glad not to have to jump in there.
Okay, perfect.
Thank you.
I'm
for-
hoping that people are finding some value in this. I mean, the exercise is simple, but I think that's the point, is how simple exercises can make things visible.
Yeah.
¿Estuviste en el anterior, Jali, el otro workshop de esta serie?
The food system, sí.
¿Estuvo bien?
Sí, es complejo, ¿no? Todo un mapeo de... Entonces me di cuenta de que, digamos, muchos de esos ejercicios dependen del contexto porque se puede entorarse en discutir los detalles de un caso de estudio ficcional y pues no avanzar en la metodología, ¿no? Entonces, lo que escogieron los organizadores fue el sistema alimentario de Estados Unidos. Entonces, pues bueno, es enorme, ¿no? Y es muy diversa y entonces, pues, se puede debatir cualquier evaluación, porque pues aquí conocemos una innovación, pero es en ese estadio, en esa comunidad, ¿no? Entonces, ¿cómo afecta el sistema entero, ¿no? Entonces fue un poquito difícil, ¿no?
Bueno, eso es un poco lo que aprendimos nosotros, ¿no? Que mejor no hacerlo así simple y sin caso, sin tratar de ser muy realista, porque...
Sí, porque se vuelve muy difícil.
O sea,
pero...
la gente empieza como a pensar en el sistema y lo de la metodología queda como en algo... Sí. Y lo importante es la metodología, entonces distrae más que otra cosa.
Pero ese es un método parecido a muchos, ¿no? De tratar de definir criterios y hacer un proceso de mapeo, de evaluación cualitativa de dónde queda el sistema según algunos criterios.
Es ciencia bastante normal, ¿no? Solo que con un toque participativo, pero no es un enfoque como el nuestro.
No, para nada. Y hay problemas, digamos, como yo he escrito de Food System Indicators. Es muy difícil porque ¿qué estás tratando de evaluar o medir? ¿Son cosas que quieres ver en el mundo? ¿Son los procesos que piensas que van a hacer visible esos procesos? Digamos, es muy complejo. Entonces, hubo un poquito de inconformidad.
Son abstracciones, es el problema de las abstracciones que la ciencia hace. Son muy buenas para el entorno en el que, de abstracción, digamos, pero cuando tienes que llevarlas a la realidad, la mayoría quedan como muy inútiles casi.
Pues eso es lo que, digamos, seguramente facilita una buena discusión. Que la gente, digamos, una manera de abordar algo muy complejo. Pero para operacionalizarlo, ponerlo, decir, pues ya vamos a intervenir en el sistema, no sé, la verdad, muy complicada.
Sí.
Y lo que siempre me da inquietudes es de que todas esas cosas participativas sobre un sistema que es muy amplio, y que extiende más que el conocimiento de cada quien, hay muchas suposiciones que no se da a la vista, ¿no? Entonces, digamos, ¿quién soy yo de opinar sobre el uso de fertilizante en Estados Unidos, ¿no? Entonces, digamos, se vuelve como clasificaciones y categorías de qué está basado, no sé, y siento como, al fin de cuentas, ¿qué tenemos? Una reafirmación de nuestras creencias, ¿no? Y no sé, no reta las creencias ni es actuable en el mundo porque no está relacionado con la información, ¿no? Entonces,
sí. O sea, los académicos tendrían que estar en los lugares donde se supone que estudian, digamos, ¿no? Tendrían que vivir ahí, ser un farmer y ser un académico también, tener el espacio para... Pero como lo separamos totalmente, entonces, claro, se crea un problema.
Tengo este colega que hace cosas de neurociencias y ciencias cognitivas y tal. Y hay un experimento muy famoso, que es el experimento de la mano de hule, ¿no? Rubber
sí,
hand,
conozco, sí.
¿no? Muy, muy bonito.
Sí.
Entonces, él estaba trabajando con estos neurocientíficos, entonces a la gente le ponían su electroencefalograma mientras ponían la mano va abajo, la mano real, la mano derecha va abajo,
Sí,
va la mano de hule por arriba y acarician las dos manos hasta llegar al punto en donde tú crees que la mano de hule es tu mano, ¿no?
Sí. Y luego lo pegan.
Y luego le pegan, exacto. Así que, bueno, lo que decía es que estos científicos nunca se habían puesto en el lugar del experimentado, o sea, del sujeto de experimentación, ¿no? Entonces ellos solo ponían el setting del experimento y les ponían el casco y todo, pero nunca habían estado en la posición de ver si realmente se siente eso. ¿No? Dice, entonces hicimos ese experimento de poner a los científicos en el lado del sujeto de experimentación y dice, y fue una revelación para ellos, o sea, el vivir la experiencia, ¿no? Y no solo tenerla como los científicos que están describiendo con su pluma, todo.
Sí.
Es muy diferente, muy, muy diferente. Sí, y por eso sí, David, o sea, los académicos tendrían que ir al lugar de trabajo, ¿no? Estar allí, o sea, estar en el lugar del otro, ¿no?
Sí.
Pero también es reconocer dónde hay límites de conocimiento. Digamos, yo creo que hay un error en la actividad participativa de decir que pues hay que facilitar la participación, pero luego la opinión, la idea de cada quien, sobre todo, es algo válido. Digamos que tiene, y si no tienes experiencia en el sector de energía, ¿por qué mi opinión sobre eso va a contar? ¿No? Entonces, hay mucho de eso, de que pues ponemos gente que opinan y que ponen en orden y no sé qué, pues, ¿pero qué? Digamos, obviamente hay que tener cuidado a quién estás incluyendo en esos procesos, ¿no? Pero
también
veces,
hay que ayudar a la gente a que reflexione más sobre, ¿no? Porque hay que llevar la gente que está haciendo las cosas, tienen que tener espacio y tienen que ser ayudados de alguna forma, apoyados a reflexionar. Y entonces, si ellos reflexionan, ya encuentran las soluciones, ¿no? En muchos sectores ya lo hacen y son los sectores que tienes toda la innovación y todo eso. Pero la cuestión es, bueno, están reflexionando sobre solo el profit, ¿no? Porque ese es el incentivo. Y la sostenibilidad lo que tiene que hacer es que les ayude a reflexionar más sobre la complejidad del sistema, ¿no? Pero para eso tienes que hacer que el profit no sea tan importante. Ese es el reto. Eso es una conversación que teníamos con el grupo del National Academy of Science, de ese taller que nos han invitado, Jale.
tú vas a ir a participar.
Bueno, creo que sí, ¿no? O sea,
Pues
no
no
tengo-
cuesta nada, es
Sí,
escuchar y
solo,
opinar.
solo hay, no podemos hablar nosotros, ¿no? Solo,
No, no.
solo chat, entonces. Sí.
Está bien para mí,
bueno.
¿no? No me
Sí,
gustaría tener
también.
que exponer.
No, tranquila. O sea, está bien para saber qué es lo que piensan y todo, ¿no? Porque se supone que son gente que luego pueden influir la agenda. Y, bueno, eh, yo tengo curiosidad por ver, porque con Pam y con Bill, con Clark, bueno, hace mucho tiempo, ¿no? Que sabía cómo pensaban hace 10 años y 15 años. Y tengo curiosidad de saber si
Si ha
están diciendo las
cambiado o
mismas
no.
cosas o ha cambiado.
Sí, sí, quién sabe, ¿no? Vamos a ver. Es de los élites, ¿no?
Sí,
Pero está bueno lo que dices de cómo cambiar esa mentalidad solo dirigida al profit y cómo, o sea, qué tipo de métodos y settings deberíamos trabajar para eso, ¿no?
sí,
Porque tampoco trabajamos, bueno, en TLab no trabajamos, bueno, no sé, tengo la impresión de que no trabajamos con gente que estaba muy metida en esa
esa
lógica,
dinámica, ¿no?
¿no? Pero sí puede tocarte trabajar con gente que son gente de empresas o
Claro.
no sé, que tienen,
Bueno,
o sea, por
y,
ejemplo, aquí en el caso de, ajá, no, perdón, más como un ejemplo, o sea, con otros estudiantes aquí estamos viendo casos de ganadería, por ejemplo, ¿no? Entonces, ¿cómo sientas en la mesa a los grandes ganaderos de Yucatán, ¿no? Y
Ujú.
que cambien su framework, ¿no? De hacer las cosas y de valores.
Claro. Bueno, ahí creo que es fundamental creer, digamos, para mí es muy claro, pero bueno, que la gente que está metida en el profit no es porque quieren el profit en sí, sino lo que quieren es el recognition que viene con el profit y la seguridad que ponen en ese profit, ¿no? Entonces, la única forma de cambiar eso es que puedan obtener esa seguridad y ese
De otra manera.
reconocimiento por otros medios, ¿no? Porque,
Claro.
bueno, incluso algunos pueden decir que no les gusta el profit, pero están
Ujú.
psicológicamente apegados a él, ¿no? O sea, no por el profit en sí mismo, sino podría ser otra cosa. Si estuviesen en otro contexto social sería otra cosa, pero entonces ese proceso como de cambio, ¿no? A nivel estructural es complicado.
Claro.
Pero mucha gente ya se salió de eso porque se han dado cuenta por ellos mismos, ¿no? Tienes gente que ha estado en Wall Street o en todos esos sitios muy enfocados y se han empachado, digamos, lo han
Ujú.
aborrecido, digamos, esa lógica o han obtenido suficiente seguridad como para que no necesitan eso, ¿no? Entonces tienen dinero en el banco y eso ya les da suficiente seguridad, entonces se dedican a hacer otras cosas que son las que
Claro.
realmente les
Es,
gustan.
ese como lo planteas es de manera bien interesante porque estaba pensando o sea, como en antropología, por ejemplo, están todos los estudios sobre el prestigio en sociedades tradicionales, ¿no?
Ujú.
En donde a veces el prestigio está en que tú das todo.
Claro, claro.
Este, pero luego
La
siento que, por
sabiduría,
ejemplo,
¿no? En
ajá,
ser viejo te da prestigio. En cambio
por
aquí,
ejemplo,
ser
claro,
viejo te da...
pero incluso, o sea, esas personas como que hacen profit de esa forma de actuar, ¿no? O sea, porque reúnen favores, por ejemplo,
Claro,
¿no? O sea, todo el mundo les debe favores, ¿no?
claro.
Entonces nunca viven mal porque todo el mundo los
Mm,
mantiene de alguna manera, ¿no?
sí.
Pero pensaba en el caso, por ejemplo, de los ganaderos aquí, cómo, cómo o sea, viven entre dos mundos, o sea, el mundo de los ganaderos en Tizimín, aquí en Yucatán, ¿no? Que a lo mejor es un mundo más de rancheros, donde me contaban, por ejemplo, que hay mucho movimiento de cocaína, como toda esta cultura más narcoganadero pudiera ser, ¿no? Aunque no es narco, o sea, pero sí consumo, ¿no?
Ujú,
Y por el otro lado viven en un mundo, como tienen mucho dinero, a lo mejor viven en un mundo de Miami,
mm,
¿no?
ujú,
Entonces, ¿cuál es el prestigio que ellos están buscando? El prestigio a lo mejor es el prestigio del que domina y manda y que es el ranchero al que todo el mundo le tiene pleistesía, ¿no? No de alguien que está reconocido por unos pares como una persona que está buscando el bien de los demás, cosas de ese tipo, ¿no? Entonces,
Bueno,
sí,
eso
el
explica,
sistema de valores es difícil.
eso explica las elecciones aquí también, ¿no?
Un poco, claro. Sí,
Que
exacto, sí. 73 millones
cuando
de
orientas
personas pensando eso.
Cuando orientas la sociedad hacia ese tipo de prestigio, tienes un presidente como el que tenemos nosotros.
Exacto, exacto, exacto. Sí, sí, sí. Y
O que
73
teníamos.
millones de personas que lo quieren mantener, ¿no? Así como-
Bueno, eso es lo ideal, ¿no?
sí, claro.
Bueno, tenemos 3 minutos más, creo. Entonces, ¿hay algo que tenemos que discutir? Para las, bueno, ahora yo tengo otra slide.
Sí, para mostrar un poquito de cómo usamos, porque
Sí,
el método, ¿no? Y creo que
que
es
tienes
importante y luego darles oportunidad de hablar, ¿no?
Ujú. A ver, ok, creo que es esta. Oh, oh. Sí, algo está mal. No sé qué he hecho. Estoy sharing algo, ¿verdad? A ver.
Estás compartiendo tu pantalla.
¿Lo veis bien?
Ahora te digo.
Sí.
Esta falta poner la pantalla completa.
Sí, porque, a ver,
Ahí está.
ok. Bueno, pues esta es la última. Y luego ya entramos en preguntas. Ahí sí que, bueno, pues hay que ir recogiendo lo del chat, ¿no? Si veis, si cualquiera de nosotros ve algo interesante, si no, pues a lo mejor la gente quiere hablar.
Y podemos, si no hay muchas preguntas, podemos describir un poquito de las otras actividades que hicimos, que digamos, no en detalle, pero Lakshmi a lo mejor puedes, que tenemos en la región.
Sí. Les dije que volvieran a 27. A ver si. Bueno, nos ha costado, pero al final salió. A la segunda, al segundo intento.
Pues es un esfuerzo bueno el que se está haciendo con estos talleres, ¿no?
Sí. Bueno, y ahora podemos ponerlo en ese artículo, ¿no? Que decía de Social Sciences. Creo que va a ser fácil.
¿En cuál? Perdón.
Nunca me acuerdo cómo se llama. Social Innovation. ¿Tú te
Ah.
acuerdas, Jali?
Para que está haciendo Bruce.
Bruce mencionó una revista que no es muy académica, sino que es más bien...
I'm going to bring everyone back if you guys are ready.
Okay, excellent. Bring them in.
Oh.
What is up with
We're back.
Yeah. Welcome back, everyone. I guess everyone is back right now. Yeah, okay. So now we'll have lots of time for questions and answers, but before that, just one more slide about both tools, the EgoNets and avatars as technologies of the self. We could ask what difference do technologies of the self and TLABs make in the context of participatory processes for transformation. First, technologies of the self turn the focus of interventions to the self. That's quite obvious, right? That's aiming at transforming systems from the inside out. And this involves breaking the perception that the systems we need to transform are out there and can be manipulated from outside. And I think this perception is very well entrenched in Western academia. So it's shouldn't take it for granted that it's so easy to make another assumption about how systems change and how they are transformed. So here, the idea is that oneself is the system and the system is oneself, right? And an important point here also is that saying that egonets or avatars are technologies of the self involves moving away from all habits and deep conditionings that privilege technologies of production, signification, and power, and that tend to value material or political outcomes over other types of outcomes. And with the TLABs and with technologies of the self, the focus is on very different types of outcomes, perhaps more intangible. So in summary, we need to change the chip. And this expression was brought up by Ruben, one of the participants in Mexico City, in one of the activities, and it rapidly became the motto for our TLAB and the most popular expression on our TLAB. This idea of changing the chip was something that participants themselves realized after a few sessions or a few workshops, and then it became clear that was one of the main goals. So please use the chat for any questions that you want to ask now, or raise your hands, and we are here to address these questions or have another type of discussion. How did the breakout session go? Do you want to share your avatars? I don't know if we can do that.
Karina's sharing an octopus,
Yeah.
it looks like, or squid. Were there any doubts about how this revealed? Did it help you think about what you bring to the table, what kinds of agency you might have in the world?
Something interesting that I found was two members in our breakout session actually drew the same avatar. So that was kind of interesting of how we, combining those aspects, because it was two different plants, but not every leaf on each plant had the same thing. So combining those was a cool idea.
Yeah,
Were
that's
you
quite
able
neat.
to see complementary powers among your group? Or did you have overlapping kind of powers?
I was also in that group, but I would say it was both. Like, we definitely had a lot of people collaborating in our group, but then we all kind of had our differences as well. And one of the points one of our members brought up that I really liked was like kind of being able to identify what you usually do might change in different collaborative settings. And then also just kind of acknowledging, like, if you tend to speak up more, to maybe give a little more time and space for others. And if you tend to want to be quiet, like, just kind of use that to give yourself a little more agency and speak up.
Well, I think we will be done earlier than we thought. So
One of the things, just to kind of give an insight into, and Lakshmi and Mario step in here too, but just to kind of illustrate how it worked in our group, we were able to, as we began to discuss about types of actions that the group as a collective wanted to engage in, that was a process by which we could reflect on what people had identified as their avatars and the powers that they had. I think often when there's an action kind of put forward, it's hard to know who's going to step up to the plate and what role you could play. But thinking through some of these adjectives that you associate with your being can begin to kind of think about how you might actually have a role to play. So for example, I'm an academic in the US, we were working in Mexico. You feel in a way a little bit distanced from being able to act in a space, but I have knowledge synthesis capabilities. I have other actions that I can provide to support a process. So thinking about matching those powers across different avatars too. There was a question here in the chat. Do you ask alters to draw avatars of a person? What superpowers are being attributed, and to compare it to superpowers listed by the subject?
I can elaborate on my
Yes.
question.
Please.
Yeah, so I was curious during our breakout session is because I drew my avatar and, you know, the same old thing came. And I'm curious whether you do an exercise in which you ask a group to draw an avatar of a person that they know, basically, and then ask the person to draw the avatar of themselves and to compare the superpowers attributed by the group to the person and by the person itself. Was it clear?
Yes. So it would be almost see how people see you and what versus how you see yourself. We didn't do that, but I can imagine that that would be a really interesting innovation. And it might, I don't know, Lakshmi or Mario, you have insights, but that might bring new ideas to the table about what you are able to do or how others perceive you.
Because I think it's interesting in the case of agency, sometimes you might not think, sometimes that may help to actually build agency. It's an intuition I have, but not sure. I was curious if you tested that, but yeah. So maybe
yeah, but actually we have one testimony from one of the participants who actually was telling us that after the session, he drew his own avatar and everything, and he went back home and he showed his avatar to his wife, right? And his wife said, "Oh, yeah, that's exactly you." You know, so, yeah. So it wasn't with people inside the group, but yeah, it worked.
I also quickly wanted to say something that is not completely related, but for us, when we saw something that was not designed, but that we saw how some of the powers could be activated, it was when an earthquake in 2017 hit Mexico City very strongly. And one of the meetings we had after that earthquake was about, okay, how can we help each other, and more like really concrete actions we could as a group do to help each other. People, well, some of the participants said that, okay, yeah, now I see that the power I said I had got activated in this case, doing this or this. No? So it was like not us designing an activity to, okay, remember your avatar, but it was like really genuine in some of them saying like, yeah, well, I said I was good at building alliances, and yeah, I saw it happening just now with the earthquake. And no, so it was like trying to, okay, let's see again how the powers that you said you had got activated, or some of them changed, or you created news. So that was very nice for us in terms of the process of making it more tangible.
Karina has a question.
Yeah, so I'm sorry, no, go ahead if there's any other question.
I was just wondering if people change their avatar through time, because you said that you were doing this through time for many years, or at least, you know, within a year. And if not, is that because somehow sometimes they imbue power into their avatar and continue? I mean, I was wondering, A, do people want to change what they did initially, or B, does it essentialize basically their avatar becoming their avatar? You know what I mean?
Yep.
You want to answer, Mario? I help you.
Well, I think it's related to something that I was going to mention before, that at the beginning when people draw their own avatars and identify their own powers, okay, I think it was at the very beginning of our TLAB. So I guess that they recognize those powers out of context, right? I mean, it's like if I just meet you and I ask you to draw, I mean, you don't know in which is the kind of relationship that we're going to build in the future. So you just map your own powers. And I think like Lakshmi was saying, that some I would say two things. One is that once you recognize your powers, maybe it gives you like a sort of comfort of how are you presenting to others to some point? And the other thing that is related to your question is that eventually as the relationship between different members of the group go building up, certain powers become more evident than others, and some become elicited and some may stay in the background. But perhaps that there's something like the earthquake, something that was hidden, it can come up at a certain moment. So I guess that like people go, I mean, situations go making people to elicit different powers at different moments. But at the beginning, you just map something that is quite general and out of context.
But the images didn't change, and that was probably because we didn't ask them or create the space for that. But that's another innovation that could happen, right? It's to have different opportunities to rethink your image and see what happens.
Maybe Lakshmi comment a little bit on the relationship between the EgoNets and the avatars. So do you see like how people saw their actions as they mapped out what they were doing with whom and how that changed, how that is related to avatars? And I think we have another question in the chat.
Yeah, there's another question, but just to answer quickly to what Hal is saying, at the end, yeah, for us, these tools and others that we used were not like little packages of something. It was just to have like the articulation of different methods as tools of self-reflection mainly. So when we went again with them and said like, okay, this is your ego network, it was not like, okay, yeah, this is your ego network and let us know if there is someone else that we didn't include. No, it was really to ask them like, how do you see your network? But how do you see also your power network? So it was like a combination of trying to articulate their eliciting of their own agency with these tools, because these tools, well, mainly the ego networks, could seem like really abstract and academic, and we didn't want that. We really wanted just to use them as just to foster more reflection. So that was, some of the testimonies are very interesting in that sense, because they were coming back to, okay, yeah, because the network of my powers changed in the relation because of the earthquake or whatever happened, and they could articulate in their own testimonies what happened with their collaborators and their powers. So that is something that I think was particularly interesting for us. They internalized the tools in their testimonies.
I think.
But there was a question of Umar, no? Yeah.
Can you unmute?
Umar, you're muted.
Unmute, yeah. Thank you very much. Just a comment and a question, some of which, by the way, which has been already addressed by Lakshmi. The thing was, I thought this was very interesting, what you were trying to do in terms of that mapping, and I wanted to know more about it. And I'll certainly read your papers and hopefully have more knowledge about it. The question which I wanted to ask, and which perhaps Lakshmi attended to it a bit as well, that if there is a change in the avatar, so let's say our initial calculations or initial map was built on a particular avatar. If we make changes in that avatar, how does that relationship, how does that mapping, the mathematics and all, does that change as well? I hope I'm making my question clear. Is it clear?
Yeah.
Does it make sense? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but I think the EgoNets and the avatars, we didn't put them together, right? So, but that's a really good question. If I mean, if we were to put together the avatars and the EgoNets and try to find the relationship between the networks and the powers, for instance, right? That's your question.
Then I'm sorry, just to interrupt you, but yeah. Then then why have we done this exercise about avatars if it's not related to the EgoNets? Is there no relationship between them?
Well, there is a relationship through the process of the TLAP, because these are tools that are not just to find out, you know, they don't have just like the goal of learning about these agents. It's more tools that the agents can use to learn about themselves, right? So I guess you can think that every participant would actually link them, right? But it's not as well. We didn't parameterize that, right? We didn't measure that. But perhaps Lakshmi.
Yeah, just a quick note on that. I think one way of seeing this is like different layers. No? So you have the ego that has powers, and you have the ego that has collaborators, and both can change over time. So it's a way of showing two different networks that are completely related to the ego in two layers, because one is your perceived powers and the other one is your collaborators. So they go together, but they are not integrated in one network. But it's nice to be able to track possibilities of change in these two networks. I don't know if Mario wants to give more detail on this.
Yeah, and I think this points to improvements that we can make, no, to further the developments that we didn't do that, but it would be really cool to do it. Yeah.
I mean, you could imagine, Lakshmi, couldn't you, that in your actions with an altar, so you're doing something with someone, knowledge production, you could also have an attribute of that activity that was related to your powers in that relationship. Like, what are you exercising? What kinds of, are you, what skills or capabilities are you doing through those interactions? It might be another dimension to your EgoNet that you could perhaps articulate. There's a question also from Samantha.
Great, thank you very much for addressing it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mar.
My question came up in discussion of the ego networks, and one of it was like, how can we distinguish between individual and collective agency? And I was wondering if you ever did not individual level ego networks, but if you worked at like the collective level, like say, one network of collaborators and then using an ego network to see how they influence other actors in, similar realms or maybe completely different ones.
Yeah. Well,
yes.
Yeah, go ahead, David.
No, I mean, I'm going to share the screen to show,
yeah,
how we did that, but go ahead, Mario.
Okay, you show it, and you want to go further on that topic, but yeah, what we did it for the ego networks and for the avatars. We both for the case of the avatars, we brought the different avatars together to see which were the converging powers and which were like the exclusive powers of an individual or an agent. And for the ego networks, we brought them together to see which were those collaborators that were shared and which were the collaborators that were exclusive to each agent. And you can have two readings of both cases. One of them is that you can see which powers were enhanced by having two or more people sharing the same power, but also you could see where were the exclusive powers that somebody will feel like, okay, nobody has my power, so this is something that I can bring into the group to help to achieve the goals of the whole group, right? Something we never did an avatar for the whole group, in terms of like everybody participating and making the powers of the group, which would be very interesting. But we did the first thing that I just mentioned, and just the idea was that if people was able to see that collective or group avatar network, they will be able to see which were the potentialities and powers that they can make use of for achieving goals that were belonging to the whole group, not to the individuals, right? And on the other hand, as for the agents nets, it was about the same thing. I mean, it was like, if we see our ego net as the group ego net, now we can see which are the social, the social net, the social links that actually we can activate to pursue certain goals. Okay. Now, one of the things I would add to this, and this is not exactly from exactly the points that we were mentioning, but I mean, these people having such an amount of time together, at the end they become to fit with each other as a group, and some certain values start to emerge from at the group level, and those values, I think that are the ones that will be guiding the activation of these powers or the social network.
So, yeah, Umar.
I'm just curious. Great, I think, great topic, wonderful discussion. I was just curious that now since Zoom has become, a global place where we all meet and we have having these sorts of networks and dialogues, I was just wondering, and this is the second or third workshop in this particular series, do we see networks and EgoNets building in this system as well? I'm just curious.
That would be good to do. Can do
I'm just curious. I mean, this is my West, by the way, second workshop. Some faces I know, some wanted to meet, someone. I'm just curious. This could be a very good experiment in itself as well. Most of us are academics as well, so really would be interested. But just would like to hear your thoughts on this as well.
I think one of the things in our TLab that, it was the mutual learning.
Oops, Haley, you just went to mute.
Sorry. So I think, to the extent to which these forums are allowing us to have those interactions with specific interactions with individuals so that we're actually, getting to know somebody and also being kind of having a kind of meaningful interaction with individuals through this group. You could imagine, I think, some of the reflections. I don't know what you guys think, but I think there's some self-reflection that occurs, independently, and as we're participating in these kinds of networks. But and having the space to really understand. I mean, one of the things that emerged in our TLabs were the alliances that were built, and people really who didn't know each other really well or at all, becoming realizing that they had complementary interests or capacities and forming partnerships. So at the end, not everybody, but there were some kind of nodes in this network that really kind of took off and gave form to collective action, not of, in a kind of subset of the group. And that, I think, required time and space, which is what the TLabs are also about, is providing the space, the kind of the time and the space for those kinds of interactions.
Well, time for some concluding thoughts then. Okay.
Yeah, I think, David, for this, I just love how the emotional and the affective, this sort of opening up of our many senses has come out of doing processes like this, in complement to the analytical stuff.
Thanks, Bruce.
If I can, really quickly, I'd love to comment on Umar's question that he kind of just asked.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
To give everybody here some context, my name is Matt. I'm a first-year graduate student here at Boulder. And being a first-year student coming from New Jersey to Colorado, from out of state to meeting all of my classmates over Zoom, I think it's been an interesting experience for myself, and just making a social group and making friends and meeting a network of people through that way. And it's definitely been challenging. It's definitely, I felt, taken more time than it would have if I was meeting my classmates in person, just socializing, making friends that way. But just in recent weeks, as I've been doing final projects and more in-depth things with my classmates, I do recognize it, and that it is building. I am forming, some good friends from this, and I haven't even met some of these people face to face yet. So I don't know. I'd just like to share my personal experience with that. Thought it would be interesting.
Yeah, that's good. We may be in this mode for a long time, or at least we will make it compatible with what we used to do before, and I think we need to take as much as we can out of it, right? So we have to learn how to use it, and this type of exercises can help perhaps. And we could it's great that Bruce has put together these these workshops, because it will give us an idea of whether we can keep like a community, or perhaps have a stronger community than the one we used to have when we met every 2 years in different cities. And yeah, let's stay there for, someone should be assessing that. Anyway, so in our case, one question that we ask at the end of all the whole process is what was really transformed, right? Because in our theory of change, we assume that the TLAP would change the relationships between the agents, and that new collective actions would emerge from these new relationships. And there is no doubt that we succeeded in creating some new relationships. But the question remains, is that enough to cause transformative changes at the level of the system? And we will probably never know, because it's very difficult to attribute causality in these complex systems. But it was not just the relationship. The TLAP changed the agent's perceptions about the system and their position in it. So that's another element of that can lead to larger system level changes. And some of them changes their values and priorities, and you know, that all that together over time may result in some significant changes. So perhaps it's just too early to tell, but we also need to consider that these tools that we are presenting are in work in progress, right? We are developing them, and we can, you know, there are many possibilities of things, analysis that you can do with these tools, or with the data that we collected. And we do not have time to discuss this here, but one can carry analysis by, you know, you can find here. I'm just showing this EgoNet gaps and redundancy map. It's about, you know, relating the egos with the practices that they can do, right? So it's something that we were discussing before. We don't have time, but all this is in the papers that, particularly the 2018 Ecology and Society paper that Lakshmi led, so you can look at that. Another example is also we discussed this just a few minutes ago, building alliances. You have the EgoNets for 2 participants here, and you can find alliances and how you can map what the larger network would look like. And just to finish some of the quotes from the participants, hopefully we can bring them next time in Zoom, but we can expand some of the participants. One of the participants said, we cannot spend our lives fighting, we cannot move ahead without the other. Now I understand a bit more the Chinampero's view. I understand they resist by sowing. So here it's a participant showing how the perception of another actor changed through the TLAP. Another one said, I really learned a lot, especially the avatars, which are personal qualities each of us is working on. I was working myself on these qualities, but I had never seen them that way. So again, the avatars was probably one of the most popular tools, because it was very easy for them to, I think, internalize and appropriate the tool and the outcome of the tool and use it along the workshop. And the last one said, imagine that everyone embodied their avatars. TLAP showed me some traits, attitudes, skills that I was ignoring, that I was not personally aware of. And that's it. So we're 3 minutes away, and probably time to wrap up.
Yeah.
Everyone.
Thank you, David. Thank you, team. I really appreciate this. I can see this is something that we can put to work in our own work. And so the series wants to make this available. In part, we've taken a video, and so we're going to edit it down, and we're going to post it on our website as well as on the Social Innovations Journal, where the presenters are being invited to publish a short article that's from other work that synthesizes the sort of how-to of this process, as well as post some of the materials that can support it. So hopefully it's a package that we can pick up and use again, and have confidence that we have everything we need to do it. So thank you, presenters. Our next workshop is on November 6th. No, that's today. Our next workshop is on November 30th. And it's called Embedding Resilience, Adaptation, and Transformation in Interventions for Sustainability. So it's this really cool tool called RAPTA, which is the acronym of what I just said, that was developed by Yehias Maru and Deborah O'Connell, who both work at CSIRO in Canberra. work in the Black Mountains of Australia. So we have just a wonderful range of people involved in this series. So it's all about food sustainability assessment and mapping. And so I hope it's something you enjoy. It can also be applied to COVID and climate change. It's sort of a sustainability assessment tool. So do send us any ideas you have if you'd like to do a presentation or have some materials you'd like to share with the community. And get in touch with me if you see some opportunities for partnership. And really hope to see you soon and to cultivate our community and to find diverse ways of doing it. I love that, touching on ourselves as humans as well as thinkers and doers, which these tools do so effectively. So thank you to our presenters and to Ashley, our organizer, Ashley Lane, and our discussants from CU Boulder's Masters of the Environment program. Thank you so much for helping put this together and making it happen. So applause for everyone. Thank you. So that's all we got. Facilitators, if you have a moment, I know you might have other plans, but if you can stay on for a few minutes afterwards for a quick debrief with the presenters, maybe give them some feedback on future presentations, that would be great. And hope to see you soon. Bye, everyone.
Thank you. Have a good day. Thank you, David. Thank you, professors. It's a pleasure. So, bye.
Bye, Fernando. Bye, Karina.
See you soon.
Yeah, I just wanted to give the presenters a chance to ask the facilitators if there's any feedback that they'd like to hear about the facilitation process that might benefit future facilitation. So I'll kind of hand it over to you. Do you guys have any questions you want to ask the discussants?
Yeah. How did it go? Like, did people, find the tools? Do you think they were engaging with the tools, or it was? I don't know, whatever feedback you can give us is useful. So, yeah.
I liked having those discussion questions to refer to kind of keep the flow going. The only feedback I did give to Ashley already. It was just in my first group, we were kind of discussing and we lost track of time. So it cut off right in the middle of a sentence. It'd be nice to have that little 1 minute left type thing.
I was going to ask you about that, Samantha, because I did that in the first ones, but I just didn't know if did anyone else see those time warnings, or was that no?
It popped up in ours.
Okay.
Yeah, we had ours. We had
comes at the top.
I saw it in the one, not the first one.
Okay, yeah, that's something to look into. I don't know what behind that, but yeah, it gives an option to send to all rooms. So, but I'll look into it. So thank you.
Do you think the participants found the breakout sessions useful?
For my group,
Yeah,
I thought, go ahead.
I was going to say, especially with the first breakout that we had, I think it gave them a chance to just kind of talk through the concepts. So, which for me personally, I think helps develop any kind of new idea that you're learning. So I think at least our group found it really valuable.
If I could interject too, so both our breakouts thought the tools are extremely helpful. I think it'd been nice to have an extra 5 minutes on the EgoNets. We had a really good conversation going on there, and I thought they found that tool was going to be very useful for them, at least within their work separate from the T-Labs.
Yeah.
And then something regarding the avatar discussion. In my breakout group, we actually talked for a moment about, some negative qualities about oneself that might be detrimental to the workplace and everything we're talking about. And maybe that would be good to mention from a presenter standpoint, just giving context of, well, yes, we're in a Zoom with many of us being strangers and whatnot. It could be hard to share some of the more negative aspects about Avatar, being more critical about oneself. So
yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, and that's it's difficult, I guess, with a short time to touch on all these angles. But yeah, that's an important one.
Yeah, I think some folks need to run. Any last minute comments from the discussants? Any other stuff you'd like to share? It's still coming up for you on process.
For the avatars, the drawing of the avatars was did it make sense? Were there good? Yeah. That's all. Well, thank you guys.
Yeah.
Thanks for the
Yeah,
facility.
thank you, discussants. And
We will
yeah,
be-
really appreciate it. David, Lakshmi, thank you for doing this. It was great, and look forward to sharing it in other formats too, to get it out as many people as possible.
Thank
All
you.
right, everyone, have an excellent day.
Yeah, thank you guys.
Bye.
Thank you, everybody.
Yeah. Hey, Ashley. Woo!
Hey.
Amazing.
What happened? Yay!
Yeah, I'm glad.
That felt a lot better.
Yeah, went real smooth. I thought the facilitators were good, at least the one I had, and they seemed to have a handle on it. So yeah, I think we figured it out.
Yay! Yeah, I mean, attendance was a little low, but it seems like the people that were here were really engaged, so that's good.
Nothing like having 10 people who are obligated to attend to make these things work.
Yeah, I was about to say that was really nice to like have those extra bodies in the room.
I know. I'm almost thinking if we do stuff next semester, maybe I should find ways to connect with some classes. Just because having that baseline of people who are going to be there is really nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or just or maybe think about doing it differently. Maybe maybe not a mass everyone gathered. These are sort of general interest kind of presentations, but maybe some more focused discussions among people who are more highly motivated around a topic.
Yeah.
A little bit too. Part of it is we have the conference next semester. I mean, yeah, next semester anyway. So, or in June. So the urgency to do a mass gathering is somewhat diminished.
Yeah, but either way, I think it went really well and smooth. Seems like we've worked out the technology kinks. So that
Yes.
was
Woohoo!
good. Yay!
All right. Okay, thanks. Do we have any follow-ups, things that are going on?
No, I did just send you an email asking you to share the contact info for the next workshop presenters because I realized I don't have it.
Oh,
I
the
haven't
next
any.
workshop presenters. Oh, I thought it was the past workshop presenters.
No, the one for the 30th.
Oh, yeah, I thought you meant
realized
today's.
I haven't. No.
Yeah,
no.
I thought that's why I sent along that something, but it was just today's emails.
Oh yeah, no, I haven't actually had any contact with them yet, so their emails aren't in my email.
Yeah, and I've noticed like in the past this guy Yahias, who is giving this workshop with Deb, has sort of blown off a few other meetings that he was invited to. So I think we need to be on him a little bit to make sure that he shows up. Plus,
If you have the time, I think it could be helpful if you maybe just quick introduce me to them and let them, and then I can let them know that I'm curious about the facilitators, or I can reach out. But
I think you can just do it yourself because we've had enough conversation with them. They kind of know the drill.
Okay, awesome. As
but I'll
long as
just
they'll, feel the
the
need to
last we've heard
respond
from
to me.
them is on 10:15. So I'll send that along to you now. Yeah, be wise to kind of align them. Cool. Yeah. I guess we talked about kind of documenting this whole process, which would be nice. How to run these meetings and from soup to nuts. It would be kind of nice to catch it while it's still fresh for you.
Yeah.
And we're talking about finding something else, some other magic task to do.
Yeah. All right. Well, that sounds good. Are we supposed to be meeting tomorrow, or are we just?
I don't know if we have
a
a planned meeting at this point. Do you think we have anything to discuss as a group?
Honestly, I don't know if we have anything important enough to warrant a last minute meeting,
Yeah.
It probably can just hold until next week.
I agree.
Okay.
Okay. Awesome. Okay.
All right.
Thanks,
Well,
Ashley. Good work.
I'm sure I'll talk to you sooner than later.
Yeah.
Okay. Bye.
Bye-bye.